Houston, we got a problem. I don't know if the Mountaineers are going to be saying that when they visit the number 7 Houston Cougars on Tuesday night, but we're going to give you all that you need to know about the Houston Cougars, about the Mountaineers, and what they need to do to keep stacking wins in Big 12 play in this game preview between the West Virginia Mountaineers and the Houston Cougars. This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. All right, welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Mountaineer Moment. My name is Troy, and this is your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. We are now in the thick of things in Big 12 play. Mountaineers coming off of a big win at home, protecting home court once again against the Kansas Jayhawks. And they win that one, and they improve to 2-1 in conference play. Also win over Cincinnati and a loss to Iowa State to get to where they are at this point in time. And now you get rewarded after a big home win, a couple home wins in a row, right? Cincinnati too is at home. And your prize, your reward, your gift for that, you got to go to Houston and face a Houston Cougars team that has been among the best teams in the nation year after year after year lately, and the top defense in the nation year after year after year. And it's going to be a difficult test. Houston has lost just one game coming in. That was to Tennessee back in November. They are off to a 3-0 start in Big 12 play. We're going to give you all that you need to know as far as like this season, specifically how Houston's got here, right? We know some of the names. They're familiar to us. We know what they did last year. Obviously, losing to Florida in a heartbreaker in the national championship, 65-63. But they're a rebuilt team, restructured team, couple really, really talented freshmen to go along with that veteran experience, and they got their sights set on another deep run this March. Again, 15-1 record, 3-0 in conference play. But as it often is, really, I mean, there's no let up in the Big 12. I get that Houston and, obviously Houston and Arizona, and those other teams atop the Big 12 conference, Houston, Arizona, Iowa State, BYU. Those four right now, at least so far as we approach mid-January, are in a league of their own in the Big 12, but they're really, really good. But all night in, night out in this conference, it. We've been in this conference for a number of years now as Mountaineer fans. There's no off nights. And so, again, your reward is you get to go to play against a number 7 Houston team who's really good at home, really good on the road, really good, period. And they're just dominant and really, really talented. So it's a difficult test. You already had a difficult test on the road in conference play against Iowa State that did not go well. But you've won a couple games since then. You got Belo back, Bren Lorient, who was massive for West Virginia in the first half against Kansas, to keep him in it, right? Belo had 16 at half against Kansas. You were down by 4. Belo doesn't do that, and you might not have the second half that you have, and so on and so forth. But again, Mountaineer Moment, episode 127. And if you are not yet subscribed, we're available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. So wherever you're watching or listening, or if you want to go on all those other platforms, hit subscribe for us. That would be great too. So we would greatly appreciate you subscribing. And by we, I mean Troy here, the host, would greatly appreciate you subscribing to Mountaineer Moment so you can be in the know when we have all new content coming your way. We've previewed every game on the Mountaineer basketball schedule so far. We plan to continue doing just that as, again, they dive deeper into conference play. So what we like to do, as part of these previews is just to get familiar with the opponent. And this might be the opponent, that just Big 12 basketball fans, whatever, West Virginia fans, we're most familiar with because of how talented they are, the style with which they play, defensive mindset. But we'll give you just context of how they got to where they're at this point this season. Some numbers to know that tell the tale of who they are as a team, some players to know, and then we'll at the end of this episode just put our West Virginia hat on and say, okay, it's a tough test, but we just beat Kansas. We've won 2 straight, showing signs of life, right? It was a massive second half with really efficient offense against Kansas. So what are some keys to how West Virginia can can do what you might deem unthinkable and go into Houston and win this game. But we'll start again with a little bit of how they got here. So 15-1, 3-0, just said that a minute ago, but their lone loss against Tennessee, neutral site court game in late November. And in the non-conference, Houston has picked up a few notable wins over teams like Auburn, Syracuse, Notre Dame, Florida State, and Arkansas. Now, their Big 12 play through 3 games, they are perfect. They got a 67-60 road win over Cincinnati, so that's obviously a common opponent in conference play. West Virginia beat Cincinnati 62-60, and Houston 67-60, so similar game there. Then they followed that up at home with a win against Texas Tech 69-65. JT Toppin and the fellas getting a 4-point win over JT Toppin and Texas Tech. And then Saturday afternoon, when West Virginia was knocking off Kansas, the Cougars were busy in Waco against Baylor and put the beat down on the Bears 77-55. So certainly of those 3 games, that's the most impressive win they're coming off of. And obviously West Virginia, through 3 conference games, they're coming off of their most impressive win of the season against a ranked Kansas team. But that's how they got here to 15-1 and rolling through Big 12 play. Obviously, before we get to some numbers, obviously one of the things that sticks out, or 2 things stick out about Houston, and it's their defense, right? They're about 60 points a game allowed, which is always among the best in the nation over the last several years. And then, offensively, again, 2 of their wins in conference play, they scored 67 and 69. They beat Baylor by 22 and scored 77. I'm going to give you some numbers from that one that don't even indicate, here in just a moment. Like, that's kind of a crazy thing considering the efficiency with which they were shooting, which we'll get to in a moment. But they're a team that, they're known for their defense. They obviously have some really, really talented players that can score the basketball. But their system is built on defense. They do not want to play a game in the 80s, right? If you're in the 80s in a game against Houston, again, you think about the national championship, 65-63, they like to play their style, and it's in the 60s. And they're certainly going to hold you as much as they can to about that 60-point mark. So that's just something that sticks out. And then offensively, if Houston's going for 90 on you, there's a good chance there's going to be 90-60. You know what I mean? Because they're just that good defensively. So that's something interesting, and obviously a similar style to what West Virginia has done. Obviously not to the caliber or level of which Houston has, but Ross Hodge, even at North Texas, he was second in the nation in scoring defense, and he's brought some of that to Morgantown. And West Virginia's defense against Kansas in that second half was really impressive. So hopefully you can play that forward. If you're West Virginia, we'll get to again some more keys for them toward the end of the episode. But for this next segment, I'm going to give you a few numbers to know relating to this Houston team before we talk about some of their specific players on the roster. So that first one, I'm just going to give you a number, then I'm going to explain it. Okay, I'm going to give you, what does that number mean? Here it is. Okay, so the first number, touched on it a moment ago with this Baylor kind of weird game that they just played on Saturday and a 22-point win. First number I'm going to give you is the number 33. 33, and I'm going to give you a second to try and guess that. I don't think you're going to be able to guess it, but the number is 33 in the context of what does that mean and where did that number appear against Baylor in Waco in that 22-point win. Here's the answer. Houston had 33 more shot attempts than Baylor. More field goal attempts. 33 more field goal attempts than Baylor in that 22-point win. A discrepancy that wide and that large can obviously be due to a variety of different reasons, right? Turnovers, one. Free throw attempts for Baylor could be, the other, right? You're not getting a field goal attempt, but you're shooting a lot of free throws, or you're turning the ball over a lot. Baylor did both of those things. They had 16 turnovers against Houston that they forced, and then they got to the charity stripe 31 times, did Baylor, and they made just 18 of their attempts. So, and another interesting point, right? Houston scored 77 points, and so it was a 22-point blowout win, but Houston shot just 39% from the floor. 74 field goal attempts for Houston, and then Baylor shot 37%, So 39% shooting for one team, 37% shooting for another team. And it was a 22-point margin of victory for Houston because Baylor shot just 41 attempts and only made 18 of their 31 free throws. Again, if you followed college basketball over the last number of years, I don't have like the games that are similar to this one for Houston as far as what they've done, but like they're elite on the defensive side of the floor year after year after year. Only giving up 60 points a game. Again, compare that to the Mountaineers, who are giving up 62.3. But as we've talked about on Mountaineer Moment, it's obviously through the non-conference. West Virginia's strength of schedule was not what Houston's was in any sense of the word. So 33 more shots for Houston against Baylor. If you run that forward, West Virginia's not. They might lose by more than 22, like Baylor. They might lose by 50 if you get 33 more shot attempts than this offense. So you cannot have that. And on the road, I didn't watch that game. Obviously, I was watching West Virginia and had some other things going on Saturday. I didn't catch any highlights of that game, but that's a pretty notable number. 33 more shot attempts. Crazy. All right. Second number, 14.3. 14.3. The Cougars of Houston are among the best in the Big 12 on the offensive glass. They're averaging 14.3 offensive rebounds per game. And you look that up and compare that, not just Big 12-wise, but compare that nationally. They rank 17th in the nation in the offensive rebounding department. 14.3 rebounds per game on the offensive glass. That's scary. That's a scary number for a West Virginia team that, obviously is coming up against the best defense in the nation. Allowing second chance points to that team's offense is not a recipe for success. So West Virginia needs to limit them on the offensive glass. And then a couple more numbers. I'll throw these both together in one little, description of this. But 44.3 and 33.6 has to do with Houston's offensive production. 44.3, 33.6. As elite as Houston is defensively, their offensive efficiency, again, as we approach mid-January, not a full season sample size, but their offensive efficiency has taken a step back compared to last season. And I didn't go further back than that, but compared to last season, it's taken a step back, so far this season. So as far as where they rank in the Big 12, Houston's field goal percentage on the season right now is 44.3, which is next to last in the conference. And then from three-point land, Houston is shooting at 33.6%. They're making them, and that's 14th out of 16 teams in the Big 12 in that department. So they're not so efficient, which maybe that, I didn't think about this prior, but maybe that is a reason for why they're getting on the offensive glass so much, because they're missing a lot of shots. 14.3 rebounds, but you're getting several opportunities throughout this game to get rebounds because your offense ain't putting the ball in the hoop from beyond the arc or from inside the arc. 44%, next to last in the Big 12, and then 14th out of 16 teams in the Big 12 as far as 3-point percentage is concerned. I'm going to give you West Virginia's numbers in that department just for reference for you. And I had it a moment ago, but I don't have it right now. Where is it? So West Virginia, as far as their field goal percentage, they're right down there with Houston at 45%. And then 3-point percentage, obviously a little bit better, but everyone's relatively close. West Virginia is up at 6th in the Big 12 in 3-point percentage, 36.6%, which is 3% better than Houston, who's at 14th. So a lot of teams in that log jam right there, 3-point percentage wise. West Virginia shoots, a decent amount of threes per game, almost 24 a game, and then Houston shoots over 26 threes a game, which is a similar description, if you recall, to Cincinnati. Cincinnati gets them up a lot, but they don't make a lot. Cincinnati, very similar here. This is kind of an interesting, kind of nugget here. Cincinnati is shooting the second most threes in the Big 12, and their 3-point percentage is the worst. Again, Houston, among the worst in the Big 12, and yet they're among the most shots taken from beyond the arc. Houston's ranked 4th in the conference and getting them up. So kind of feast or famine, right? You're shooting a lot of them, but you're not making them at a high clip. So certainly an interesting point there relating to this Houston offense. Now, again, might be the most familiar we are with a team in this Big 12 conference because of who they are, because of where they've been, because they made it to the national title last year and almost won the thing. I feel like they should have, right? But a few players to know, a couple freshmen if you don't know as well. So senior guard Emmanuel Sharp, familiar face, no doubt, leading the team in scoring over 16 points a game. Solid shooter, we knew that. Attempting over 7 threes a game. So you talk about this team and their shooting. He's shooting a lot of them, over 7 a game, almost 40%. He's knocking down from downtown. So keep an eye on Emmanuel Sharp. The freshman, Kingston Flemings, has been pretty impressive through his first 16 games as a Cougar. He's averaging 15.7 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, and 2 steals. Looking to be a potential lottery pick in the 2026 NBA draft. Freshman Kingston Flemings, a major, major contributor for Houston and a Houston team that's obviously going to be looking to compete for a Big 12 title and a whole lot more. Now, if you round out their starting 5, and I didn't fully know this prior, just doing a little bit more research on this Houston team, they are, as far as scoring production is concerned, they're relatively top heavy as far, starter heavy. So to round out their starting 5, you got Milo Suzanne, Sanok Jr., and Joseph Tugler to round out the starting 5, and they rely on those 5 players. Sanok, the freshman, he's averaging almost a double-double, 9 points and 7.5 rebounds. He's really good. And then, of course, Tugler, we know that name, and Milos Uzan, who's averaging 11 points a game to go along with 4 assists. The guy who transferred from Oklahoma earlier in his career and started every game for the Cougars last season and starting right here again on the 2025-2026 campaign. He has had a cold stretch of shooting to start the season. Hopefully that continues on Tuesday night. For a kid that shot it over 42% from 3 last season, he's down at 26% this season is Uzan, and he's averaging almost 6 attempts a game. So hopefully that trend continues if you're the Mountaineers. But a really talented Houston team, but a really talented starting 5. Again, it's no slight to them. It's just a description of who they are to this point this season. The guys coming off the bench, Isaiah Harwell, Mercy Miller, Ramon Walker, they're averaging 5 points, 4 points, 3 points. Chase McCarty averaging 3 points in 16 games. And so they're top heavy. Their starting 5 is the guys who are producing the most. And so that makes you think, if you're a Mountaineer fan, as we transition to that point to close out this episode, well, yeah, it's an incredibly tough test. It's an incredibly tough team. It's a Houston team that's capable of beating you by 22 points, beating you by 30 points. Like, they're that good. So take all of these points that I'm going to make with this West Virginia team with a grain of salt. But based on the numbers, based on what we even know about the Houston team, and again, a lot of those names are familiar, their starting 5 is elite. Might be the best starting 5 in the land. It very well could be. But get a couple guys in foul trouble, right? Just disrupt the flow of things. Like, there's opportunities there. If a guy gets saddled with two fouls really early, has to sit down. Then there's a guy coming off the bench that simply put does not produce at that same level. So that's one thing. That could be a help to the Mountaineers if you're going to look at, if you're grasping at straws here, if you might think that. Nonetheless, it is a tough test. And I'll give you just a couple more things with this West Virginia team. I think a major key, a major point, if you want to stay in this game, obviously your defense has to be on that kind of Houston level, Now, again, I personally think West Virginia's defensive numbers, and I was saying it all prior to that Kansas game, they're inflated because their strength of schedule was it wasn't challenging in the non-conference. And when you did come against, those teams you lost to, those teams for a lot of those games had their way offensively against your defense. Now, considering what West Virginia just did to Kansas, I'm a little more hopeful that they can move that forward, right? You gave up 75 to Kansas, but you held them to 32 in the second half. You went on a 16-0 stretch. If you're going on a 16-0 stretch, I don't care what level, you're playing some good defense. That stretch also was a 22-2 run that it went out to, and West Virginia took the lead and never looked back. So you did some really good things defensively in that second half. Peterson, top 3 pick in the upcoming draft, went 6 of 17. He had 16 or 18 points at the half and then finished with 23. Jasper Floyd, shout out to him, did a great job. That was talked about post-game. There were different looks, different guys coming over and hedging and all those kind of things too on Peterson to give him fits, but not his best game for a future NBA All-Star, MVP candidate who's going to have a 15-year, 20-year career in the NBA, right? If it projects out correctly, right? That dude's got crazy potential, and you held him to 6 of 17, and you held him to either 5 or 7 points. Can't remember, 5 or 7 points in that second half. West Virginia's defense has to play at a really, really high level because one thing for certain, Houston's defense is going to make it tough. This game, literally, if West Virginia plays really good defense, we know Houston's going to play really good defense, this game could be in the 50s, could be in the 40s, right? Like, it's that crazy. On paper, two of the nation's top defenses. Again, I'm not sitting here. On paper, yes, that's true. West Virginia is not Houston. They've benefited at times from an easier schedule, but they're coming off a really good half of basketball where you just beat Kansas 47-32 in the second half. That's really good. That's really impressive stuff. You coming off an 11-point win. We talked about it after that game. That's a confidence boost for this team and these players and these coaches, and you gotta take that momentum and push it forward. As is the case with Houston a lot. Now they're coming off obviously a blowout win against Baylor, but what we've seen with Houston at times because of the nature with which they play, right? They only beat Cincinnati by 7. It was a tight game against Texas Tech. They play close games a lot because they're not going out there scoring 95 points a game, right? This isn't Alabama. This is Houston, and this is their style, and this is how they play. But sometimes that can make it more difficult for this Houston team to blow you out because while they might hold you to 18 and a half, they themselves might only get 25, right? Like that, there's the potential for that, right? I don't expect West Virginia to get 40 and a half. They got 47 against Kansas. I don't expect West Virginia to get 40 and a half against Houston. So that changes the game in that sense. But defensively, you got to show up. You got to make it tough. You got to make it tough on Houston just like you did on Kansas. And Kansas obviously is talented, right? I mean, Bill Self said it postgame. He said they suck right now, and maybe they do. They got Darren Peterson. They got some other guys that can really play basketball, and you made life difficult for them in that second half. So kudos to that Mountaineer team for their defense. And then the last thing I'll mention is something else that you noticed in that Kansas game that you just have to have. I mean, if you're going to beat a team like Houston or hang with a team like Houston, forget winning, you're going to hang with them, you have to have continuity. You can't have silly turnovers, and you have to have multiple guys play well, right? And I it's recency bias, and I get it. Like, it's recency, right? Because you just played Kansas. But there were so many moments this season where it was just one or two guys carrying all of the load, and you know who they are. I've said it if you've been here, and you know if you've just watched. These guys have carried the load offensively. But Harlan Obioha came out and got a double-double against Kansas, 11 points, 10 boards, 6 offensive rebounds. Are you kidding me? Like, you needed all of those to win this game. You got great production from Obioha. Jasper Floyd, we already said it post-game after the Kansas game, but I'm going to say it again. His second half engineered that comeback because he was saddled in the first half with 2 fouls, sat down most of the half. Amir Jenkins plays most of the first half. Meanwhile, Jasper Floyd's coming off a game where he didn't shoot the ball once, so he's already like on the hot seat for fans. And in the second half, he comes out 4 for 4, backs down a guy in the post, makes a couple shots, makes a 3, a step-in 3 where Kansas then calls a timeout. He was that good. 9 points, 4 of 4, made his only 3. That was good, right? So you got production from those two, not to mention Belo carried the load. We said it already. 16 points in the first half. He only finished with 18, but that first half mattered. Okay? Trace and Eaglestaff had 12. Honor Huff got hot, knocked down 9 of 10 free throws. The 5'10" on a good day guard had 7 rebounds. He had 8 rebounds against Cincinnati to lead the team. Like, that dude is playing ball. That dude is playing ball. He had 23 points. And he needed all of it. DJ Thomas made a 3 in the first half. Chance Moore made a 3 in the first half. Chance Moore was quiet, considering, like, sometimes you might think coming into that Kansas game, I thought, if we're going to have a chance, it's going to be a Chance Moore kind of game because he's, that good, athletic wing who can defend and drive toward the basket. Well, he only played 20 minutes, and Trace and Eaglestaff played 38. And with that said, I want to give a shout-out to the head coach, Ross Hodge, for seeing that, because it worked, right? How do I know it worked? Because we won, right? You might still think that Eaglestaff didn't deserve 38 minutes and Chance Moore deserved more, but we won the game. Eaglestaff played 38 minutes, had 12 points, knocked down 2 out of 5 from downtown. You had to have a collective team win, a team effort, and I can promise you that that's the first time we've seen that level of team play this season from the starting 5 and a couple guys off the bench that really played well. Have we had team wins? Yeah, when it's 95-60 against whoever, right? Like against a low-quality opponent. But you had a Kansas team, a blue blood, 4- and 5-star recruits everywhere, coming to Morgantown, and you beat them. And we talked about Floyd. I mentioned Obioha had double-double. That's his first double-double, well, second double-double of the season. All right, we remember the game against Pitt where he went off. He had 19 points, 6 rebounds. Mississippi Valley State was the other game in an 86-51 win. He had 12 points, 10 rebounds. But against other notable teams, like named teams in major conferences, Obioha, since that Pitt game, has been bad. He said it himself post-game. Like, he hasn't played well. I'm paraphrasing, but he said something along those lines. And then against Cincinnati, in 24 minutes, you know what Obioha did? 0 points, 6 boards. You barely won. Against Iowa State, 2 points, 2 boards in 21 minutes. He's 7 foot tall. Against Ohio State, 4 points, 5 rebounds, 25 minutes. Against Wake Forest, 5 points, 5 rebounds, 13 minutes. Against Xavier, 3 points in 14 minutes. Against Clemson, 0 points, 0 for 4, 9 rebounds. Right? And I get, like, I don't want to beat up on the guy, but, like, I'm just proving a point that it was a team win, and you needed Obioha to go get a double-double against Kansas, and he got it. He hasn't done that since Pitt, which was 2 months ago to the day that you're going to play against this Houston team. 2 months ago, he had 19 points against Pitt, January 13th. Or I'm sorry, it's January 13th now, and November 13th was last time he did that. Against every team, major conference team that you've played between then and now, between then and Kansas, Harlan Obioha struggled. And he comes out, 11 points, 10 boards, 2 blocks, 3 out of 5 from the free throw line, 4 to 7 from the field, 6 offensive rebounds. He was huge, literally and figuratively. Like, he was massive for this win. It was a team effort. Again, you needed you needed Belo to carry the load in that first half. He did. You needed Obioha to be big. He did. You needed Jasper to come back in that second half, run the offense well, get to his spot, make some shots. He did. You needed Honor Huff to just make a couple wild threes. He did. You needed Eaglestaff to give you a little production offensively. He did. Right? So if you move that forward, Houston's a different animal. This is going to be extremely difficult. But it's I can promise you it's not going to be done with 1 or 2 guys. It's not going to be Chance Moore and Honor Huff going for 20 each or whatever. It's going to be a collective team effort. You're going to need your best game of the season. You just played your best game of the season against Kansas. You're going to need to top it. You're going to need to top it. You're on the road against Houston. Are you kidding me? Houston is unbelievable. If you're a Houston fan watching this, we have so much respect for your program and what you've done over the last few years. And, we want Mountaineers to come in and beat you on your floor. But it's going to be so hard and so incredibly difficult. And we'll see what happens. But this has been episode 127 of Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. Houston game preview between them and the Mountaineers of West Virginia. And then, of course, post-game reaction, we'll have you covered here on Mountaineer Moment. As soon as the game goes final, we'll get that episode posted real quick for you to enjoy, and we'll talk about all the action on episode 128 coming your way tonight after West Virginia and Houston do battle. So we'll see you then. That's a wrap for episode 127 of Mountaineer Moment.